So I am Zachary Shuman, a third semester nursing student, also in the honors program, and I am interviewing Lynn Nugent, longtime professor for the nursing program. Hello.
Hello, Zachary.
Hello. So let's see, I talked to you briefly before, and you said you've been teaching here since 1979, and you were full-time faculty for a few years, and you were the director of the nursing program
Right.
for a while, and since 2003 you've cut back your hours a bit and you're doing the skills lab, which is where I've met you before.
That's the brief history, that's right.
Alrighty, got the brief history, huh? So, let's see. I guess we'll just dive into some random question I thought of.
Okay, let's go for it.
All right. Well, I guess, what was the nursing program like when you got here?
When I was hired, it was 1979. There were several experienced faculty members, and I was the first person to be hired full-time whose initial preparation was in a community college program. So, and I'm a very strong supporter of community colleges. I went on from there and earned enough degrees to qualify to teach. And the year that I was hired, the program, it was a very busy time because in addition to all the regular teaching and other activities of a faculty member, we were at that time preparing for our initial accreditation by National League for Nursing, as it was then called. And so there were reports to be written, a big document to write, and revise and revise and revise, and lots of extra meetings held in order to obtain this special voluntary accreditation. Right. So that was what was going on in the nursing program. For the college as a whole, it was a much smaller school than it is now, and I think closer relationships among the administration, the faculty, the many people on the support staff, and now as all of the programs have expanded, certainly I think we've lost some of that closeness, gained a lot of things, but that was kind of the atmosphere in '79. The physical campus was very different from what it is now, and there's been a lot of improvements since that time too. So it was a neat place to be. There were, I was looking back on some things that I had collected over the years, and there were several of us who were hired in that year who stayed and made careers of teaching at this community college. And so I think it was really a good year to get started here.
Yeah. Awesome. How big was the nursing program? How many students were there in it?
Total students, it seems like we were admitting maybe about 40 students, many of whom kind of dropped off during the first semester, and the graduation rate was about half that. I think we graduated maybe 21 or 22.
And that was just a once-a-year start?
It was a once-a-year graduation. Now, I know the initial class that graduated was 7 students. Wow. And so from that time, I think it was about 1970 or 71, because the nursing program started with the college, from that interval of about a decade, they went from 7 graduates to maybe 3 times that at, let's call it 21, 20, 22, somewhere around there. Right. So it wasn't anywhere near as big a program as it was now. Right. And a lot of the students were admitted who then decided either they needed more time to finish the program and they kind of stopped out in semester 1, or just didn't successfully complete the semester. So there was much more attrition than there is now, because there are more ways of screening people,
a couple years before they get there,
a lot, absolutely.
Well into it by the time they even start.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, if I remember correctly, let's see, my class, starting last fall, was the first when they got the big grant from the state and added the night weekend class, and then starting when they had another night weekend class with this fall, I think there's is it just over 200?
I
Going
believe it's
through the system
somewhere
now?
around
Something
there.
like that. So
And at that time
it's a lot of growth.
that I was here, there was no nursing program on the Verde campus either.
True.
It was located only in Prescott. And so while we had students from the Verde area, they had to commute, and it took an hour at least each way, from Cottonwood to Prescott.
Wow.
Some came from Sedona, that was even farther.
Wow.
So it's grown a lot. And yet for many, many years, as the program grew and as the program expanded into the Verde campus, we really didn't add to our staff. And so the same number of people were doing a lot more work with a lot more students.
Right.
The secretarial support did not increase. We had additional part-time people doing work in the clinical setting, but the brunt of the work, of course, falls upon the full-timers,
Right.
and
Definitely.
it's pretty much, an extremely dedicated and talented group of faculty.
Yeah. As I understand it, that's kind of been the main bottleneck in nursing in general, has just been not enough instructors as the demand goes up.
And it is a matter of not enough instructors who have the educational preparation that they need. It requires a master's degree to get a full-time position, a minimum of a bachelor's in a community college, and for a long time Prescott didn't have very many people who had those degrees. Even though they might have been interested and would have been excellent instructors, they weren't educationally qualified to do that.
And by the time you've got that level of education, there's a lot of other options to...
Well, there certainly are
Go
increasing
into,
options in
yeah.
nursing, and that's the neat thing about nursing, is there's so many different things
Yeah,
that people
how's-
can do.
What's the biggest change you've seen in nursing in your time?
Oh.
I know there have been a lot of them. I mean, this is not so much about the school, but
Right.
I'm fascinated by it.
One of the big changes, other than the educational preparation, and certainly programs have had to try to keep up with, but I think the use of technology has been markedly increased from the time when I started my career and there was minimal technology, but now there are so many monitoring devices, so many things, and the extra responsibilities that nurses have. And they've certainly grown to, I think, have more respect and work in a more relationship with others on the healthcare team as a colleague, rather than being, thinking really old terms, the handmaiden of the doctor.
Right.
We've
Right.
long gone from that to being a much more respected professional. And I think that's been a very positive thing, and yet, in our educational programs, we have to teach the students all of these things, but to remember that underlying all of this, there is a person who has a health problem or is interested in preventing one, and to deal with that person as an individual and very respectful.
Cool.
And we've tried to incorporate all of that.
Right. Yeah, a challenge. So, how has that changed the program itself and the school? What have the effects been on trying to fit everything in?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. That's been very hard to do because we can't just keep increasing credits and
Right.
make it longer and longer to get your degree. But we continue to have a very strong science component to the program. There's anatomy, physiology, there's micro, there's liberal arts, and while some students kind of wonder why they have to take some of those classes, it really is helping to make you think about people and their background and where they're coming from in a hopefully a broader way. How has nursing itself changed? I think our curriculum has gone from a lot of rote memory to being able to think about, this is the situation, what are the options, what's the best one in this situation, and how can we deal with it and then evaluate the results. Certainly, thinking nursing process-wise, that's been the model over the years, but I think continued to be refined. And the program has gone through many different iterations, all of which need to get approvals through the college system and through the Arizona State Board of Nursing in order to implement anything.
Right.
So there's a lot of regulation on through both of those bodies for anything that we change. But we've been able to successfully keep moving along, incorporating more nutrition is an example. There didn't used to be a separate nutrition class, and we identified the need that, that's a really big component now. I know the program is now looking at adding a special class in ethics, biomedical ethics, because that's become a very big situation, a problem sometimes, and how to deal with that. But in order to add those things, something else has to go.
Yeah, I know between my class and the class that just started, they actually incorporated the pharmacology class in the second semester. I was just talking to the professor I took Psych 101 with, and he said they had made that optional to make room for the pharmacology. So it's always kind of a pinch when you've got to make room.
It is, and because there are so many nursing students and because they have to take non-nursing classes, I think the program has had a big impact on enrollment in many different areas of the college. And if one course is dropped as required, like Psych 101, that impacts their enrollment too.
Right, definitely.
So we all have to work together.
Yep. Let's see. What changes? Here's a curious one. I know you said attrition has gone down, and I heard that my incoming class was the highest percent of men in the class that they had ever had. I think there was all of 10 of us, or 8 or something. How have the demographics of the student body changed while the time here?
I would say the 8 out of 70 or 80 students, 10% is 8 men out of 80 students or whatever. I'm not sure what the number initially was. Is not the highest it's ever been.
Okay.
And I think over the years we have had some years where there were 15% or so men in the class, other years where, maybe there was one lonely fellow,
Right.
Maybe he wasn't too lonely, but
maybe they're going by total numbers.
and that could be.
Yeah.
But initially, certainly, nursing was thought of as a profession for women to enter. But there have always been some men in nursing, and I think that number is growing, and I think that men add a lot to the program. We just need to, think of men as certainly people who can become excellent nurses, and it requires that nursing faculty and staff keep that in mind, as well as the people in the clinical agencies. And initially, when we started getting more men in the program, it took some adjustment of thinking on the part of people who'd been nurses for a long time and had never worked with men in that role.
Yeah.
But I think there is.
Well, I haven't had any problems.
Now there's a special organization called Men in Nursing. That there's a national organization. There are enough men to form their own group, but they have felt a need to do that. So I think that still says we've got some room to work on it to grow.
Have there been any other changes that you've noticed, just in
Demographics?
Who wants to go into nursing? And
well, I found an article going back to the early years of the program, and it talked about they had students that ranged in age from 18 till their mid-50s. I would guess in your class you've got people ranging in age from late teens to mid-50s and somebody up to maybe 60 years old. Many people go into nursing as a second or third or maybe fourth career. Many who have said, I married young, I had children, I then decided as my children became school age that I would like to do what I've always wanted to do, and that is to become a nurse, and finally feel that they have the time to devote to themselves to. There have always been people who have have needed a job,
Right.
and nursing is something that within a 2 to 3 year period of time, if you work really hard, you can
Yep.
accomplish that. And there are now certainly excellent employment opportunities in all aspects of nursing. So I think another thing that we've added to our program over the years, when I started teaching here, there was no preceptorship. And that's one of the things that I think has been a real strong point of the program. I'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. When was that added?
In the mid-'80s, there was a little team of 2 faculty members. I was one, and another who has since retired. And they were then called directors of nursing from the 2 main hospitals here in Prescott at the time in the mid-'80s. And we were looking around, looking for ways as part of a funded project to enhance the preparation of nursing. That was the title. And in looking, we found a community college in California that had implemented this preceptorship experience. And excuse me.
Explain what that is a little more.
Yeah,
I know and you know, but
yeah, in the 4th semester of the program, the students would compress their classroom work so as to be done a month before the program ended. And during that final month of the program, they would be paired individually with a working staff nurse in one of our agencies here, and work pretty much the same shift that nurse worked, the same days, and transition from the role of being a student to working as a staff nurse. And as we began to collect some data to assess the success of this program, whether it was successful, students were telling us it was really the best part of the nursing program, and that they did begin to get a real sense of what it meant to really work as a nurse, to get beyond the role of being in clinical, having your faculty member with you, kind of having to do it on a more limited basis with maybe one patient at a time. They're really caring for several at a time and working with a very experienced staff nurse who was willing to work with them and help them to learn. And so it helped the students, markedly helped the staff nurses, and made a better situation, for our students. It also increased our relationships with the agencies where we place the students for this precepted experience. So lots of win-win for that. And I was very fortunate in that the college gave me some time off from some of my other responsibilities to be able to develop and implement this program. And it's still going strong, and it has been a model that several other colleges and universities in the state and elsewhere have now implemented too.
Excellent. Cool. How about clinicals? I know I've done basically 1 day a week of those through the whole program. Has that been the same the whole time you've been here?
Yes and no. We've certainly tried lots of different options. When I first started, and I remember that the students would work in clinical only until noon, and this was second-year students. So it kind of limited their time, but they'd come back to campus and watch movies in the afternoon. And that was really not the most productive use of time, and we eliminated that pretty quickly because, people have to get up and be ready to go before 7 in the morning. You
Right.
sit them down in a dark room after lunch. That wasn't
I can see how that would,
that wasn't the best
not
use
get
of
much
of the educational time.
Definitely.
So we have gone from that and to find that students really benefit by spending as much time as possible in clinical. They've now also implemented the idea of clinical simulations where they come back and work with the instructors to evaluate students' responses to a particular situation using mannequins, not
Right.
real people.
Yeah, they give us the dire circumstances that we fortunately don't see that much on real people.
No, but if you did, you'd be better prepared
Exactly.
to deal with it. So we've changed times of clinicals. also we kind of have to work with the agencies,
Right.
trying not to overload any one unit with too many students, or students, at of two different groups at the same time, which has been a trick as the program
As the
has
program
expanded.
grows. Yes, I was in the big bump up group, so
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen a lot of that. It's been done
But
quite well.
overall, the agencies have been really incredible to work with us. Our advantage here is that we're not competing with any other programs
Right.
as they are, for instance, in the Phoenix area, where there are multiple community colleges and at least 2 university programs.
All right. Well, I know you brought in some materials.
Well,
Anything else? Is there anything what interests you?
what I think is important, I've got a picture. I'm not sure if we're in focus here. That doesn't show it. Doesn't show very well. But as Yavapai College approached its 30th anniversary, we brought together the former directors of the nursing program, and the terms have changed over the year from director to manager to chair to dean, but all these people who were in charge of the nursing program. And I think it's kind of important to recognize them. I'd like to just read their names if that would be okay.
And hopefully, I don't know how they'll be presenting this, but I think it may be kind of an online thing, in which case they might be able to scan in some of this and have it there presented with the video. I'm not sure, but...
Well, the original director of the program was Barbara Kitchens, and my understanding is that she and Wanda Burkhart, who was the first full-time faculty member to be hired, sat down with a pad of paper, a yellow legal pad of paper, and started to draft a nursing program. I mean, It was that basic.
Wow.
And, to think how far we've come, it's amazing. The second director of the program was Ruth Westernen, and she was originally a faculty member who was then promoted to be director. Dorothy Carruthers was brought here from University of Arizona and was the director when I was hired. And she was the one who initially obtained the National League for Nursing accreditation for the program, and remained in that position for many, many years. And we still communicate. She's retired and moved to Oregon now and doing well. Barbara McClurg was next, and she was the program director for quite a while, and then became the vice president of the college. It's here, I'm not sure. And then this was during the time, this was in 1996, when I was in charge of the program. And I thought it was just very interesting and an honor that these people would come back to be here to help us to celebrate the 30 years. So that was neat. Another picture is one that goes even farther back, and this is dated 1973. And that's a picture of Barbara Kitchens and Ruth Westernen, and then talking about the nursing graduate at that time, using the pronoun she, which we've already addressed that, because at that time most of the students were women, although it does say in here that they do have some men in the program too. But at that time, the idea of a community college program was relatively new. It was just at the time when the hospital-based diploma programs were closing down, and community college programs certainly growing in strength and numbers. Got a picture of the people who were hired in 1979, and I'm just impressed that so many of us really stayed and had careers here. I think that was a real plus. And something that the college, one of our college publications at the time, from 1981, talking about the nursing program, then getting the NLN, National League for Nursing accreditation, and some pictures of students then. Kind of neat, and to look back and to think that many of these people we've kept track of over the years. Some are still employed at local hospitals, and I think that the program has markedly contributed to the number of nurses in the community, but our graduates have gone on to work in the state around the country. In fact, the first year I was here, we had 2 licensed practical nurses from Wisconsin who had heard about our program and came here specifically to be able to complete it, to move from LPN to registered nurse. And we've had some students who have worked internationally even, so there are lots of different opportunities. I really think that this program has contributed much to the profession of being a registered nurse.
Excellent. Well, how does the school help figure things out when something doesn't go as smoothly as we'd like?
Well, and there have been a lot of different situations over the years of and I'm thinking particularly go as smoothly with a student. Maybe the student is having, some kind of problem. We've had students who get sick or who have death in the family and they have to miss some time, and they're really distraught because of a situation. And if there has been any way that we can work with the student and give them ways to make up their experiences, and maybe some extra time if they need it to take an exam, finish a project, do a paper, whatever those things are, even an incomplete grade at the end, to try to help the student, if they think and we think that it's realistic that they stay with their class and continue, as long as they can meet the standards of the program. We've done that. We've I think having a student look at their own illness from the perspective of a patient to a nurse relationship and try to see what did a nurse do that was helpful to you or do that wasn't helpful, and maybe change, so they don't ever act like that nurse.
Exactly.
Which are fortunately very few situations.
But you can learn. You can learn positive examples too.
Absolutely, but you can learn from the negative,
Yeah,
I think,
definitely.
and to know, this isn't who I want to be, and this isn't how I want to do it.
And this is what it feels like from the client end when somebody does.
Yes, absolutely, and I think you learn more that way in many ways. And we used to work with students who'd have just a whole variety of problems. Sometimes it was a problem with a child. Sometimes it was a problem that they just had to work to earn enough money to feed their family or to keep the lights on, and try to help them find resources. We've had a lot of generous groups that have provided scholarships to our students, and to make that information known to them so that they could get financial help if they needed it. And yet there are also times when you've gone as far as you can, and if somebody breaks a bone or something, sorry, you got to wait another semester, and then you can come back and try again. But I think we've been very flexible and very student focused, and I speak for the faculty that I have worked with. They have been, I think, an amazing group of people who stuck together and had a very much of a unified, student-oriented approach to teaching while still maintaining the necessary standards.
Yeah. Well, as you said, the attrition rate is not very high these days. Most people definitely get through it. We have a few in my class who dropped back from classes ahead of us, but then they picked it up again, and that seems
that's an option. But I think it's been something that has changed over the years of making sure that when somebody applies to the program, they know that it is a demanding program. They know it's very time intensive, and they're prepared for that. As opposed to you get admitted and you go through all the happiness in your first day of class, and wham, it's more than they can handle at that time. So it's a matter of educating people even before they get actually into the program. So that's that part of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned off camera a minute ago about the expansion of the program out to Verde.
Right. The Verde is part of Yavapai County. It's part of our community college district. The Verde encompasses Cottonwood, Clarkdale, Camp Verde, Rimrock, Sedona, several different smaller communities. and they have banded together to form a Verde campus, which was in place when I was hired, but they didn't have any nursing program there. They have a hospital in the Verde area in Cottonwood, which is a growing hospital, and they've affiliated with Northern Arizona Healthcare. And so in the early 80s, as the college began to look at distance delivery concepts, the idea of can we have classes that originate on one campus and we have students on another campus. This was way before computer online learning and such. But initially, we started with the director of our program recognized how important this would be, so those students didn't have to commute so much and tap into a group of people that wanted to be nurses, but they just couldn't leave their homes. Initially, we had students coming over here one day a week, and another day when they were doing classes, it was by an audio system. So we'd have this little rod antenna-like thing sticking up in the back of the classroom, and we'd have to send over all the written materials and such ahead of time. But the students listened like to a radio and tried to ask questions, but that was very difficult. And fortunately, that lasted only a brief period of time when the college invested more and more into telecommunication technology, and then we had the ability for the students on the distant campus to see what was going on a television screen, and had verbal audio connection that worked pretty well most of the time.
It still works pretty well most of the time.
Yeah. At that time, we were dependent on good weather and no snowstorms on Mingus Mountain, because that's where the receiver, whatever the thing is that transmits the signal.
Now we just rely on Quest and
now it's phone wires, right? So, technology moves along in education. We talked earlier about how it's moved along in healthcare, but it has in education also, and now there's the ability to do online courses. I don't think that all the nursing courses will ever become online courses, and certainly the clinical,
you definitely need the clinical
component. You need the experience of working with people. Right. I mean, if somebody's been a nursing assistant for years and years, they've got some of that comfort level already, but we have lots of students for whom their nursing assistant class and then the nursing program is the first time they've really worked with sick people. Right. And so I think you need that time of interaction and to build up your skills, your comfort level, and your ability to communicate with people and with the staff that are your resources. Definitely. So, nursing education has come a long way, but we've grown with it, and in order to meet our community college district needs, we've expanded into the Verde. Whether we'll ever go to Chino Valley, I don't know. At this time, it's not that far a distance for those people to come to this campus. Right. Traffic might be a bit of a problem, but the distance isn't too far.
Right. I know they have clinicals that are out near the Verde campus too. So.
And they have the hospital. It's changed names as it's changed its affiliations. It's now Verde Valley Medical Center. Yeah. It's a growing hospital. They have some services there that are definitely state-of-the-art services and have expanded and modernized markedly. So it's been a good setting for clinical experiences, and they also have employed a lot of our graduates. So it's neat. And also, they have programs, as to Yavapai Regional Medical Center and the VA Hospital, to help orient new students on the idea of tuition reimbursement for nurses who want to pursue to an advanced degree, a bachelor's degree, or a graduate degree. Those are in place in many institutions now to help the nurses gain more knowledge, more skills, and move up into higher level positions within an agency, or perhaps prepare to work in a community health nursing such situation, home health care.
Yeah. Now I know they have, somewhat similar to the preceptorship program, they have an externship program, which YRMC also has. Do you know when was that started and how did that?
The externship is pretty new. Before that, there were new graduate programs. So both of those, the new grad helps obviously the new graduate transition into the staff nurse role by an extended orientation time. The externship programs allow somebody who is still a student to work in an agency and use some of the knowledge and skills that they've learned in school and apply them while they're working. So they work beyond the role of a nursing assistant. Right. There are some limitations, however, of things
no meds, no IVs.
Right, right. and that is State Board of Nursing regulation.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's its own state licensure or something like that. It's its own state regulation.
It's a state regulation. It's an unlicensed position.
Right.
Right. But it is a way that a student can work, usually at a higher rate of pay,
right.
Which it would be good news. But also to be able to do more than a nursing assistant or a patient care tech.
Right. So that's fairly recent that's come about.
Yeah. Only in the last, I'm probably wrong about this, but I would say 5 years, give or take a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, let's see. So, well, going back, switching gears a little. Switching gears a little. What brought you to Yavapai College?
I grew up in Prescott. I'm not a native, but pretty close to it because my parents moved here when I was still a child. So
I think that makes you a native.
It was pretty almost as close as people get these days.
Yeah, exactly.
But I went through the school system here. Prescott is my home and always has. It's the one I remember. Right after high school, I joined the Navy. I worked as a hospital corpsman, and that's when I became really very interested in healthcare positions. Right. Came back here, and after some years, I got a job at the local VA medical center, which has undergone a lot of different name changes, but for veterans, and worked as a nursing assistant there. And I saw some staff nurses who were excellent role models, and I decided I wanted to be a nurse too. And at that time I had 2 little children to care for also, so was looking around at options. And if I'd waited 1 more year, I could have been in that first class here at Yavapai. But I was ready to move on, and I think in a way it was a good decision to go to Phoenix. I went to Phoenix College, got my nursing associate degree, worked at St. Joseph's, now St. Joseph's Hospital Medical Center for a while, and went to Tucson and got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and then decided I wanted to come back here and wanted to teach. And because I had, at some point in all this education, that I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Cool.
So I called Barbara Kitchens, who was then in charge of the program, and she had no positions. So I still wanted to move to Prescott. So I went back to work at the VA hospital and worked as a nurse practitioner for several years, and really enjoyed that a lot, and took some time off when my youngest child was born, and then decided, I think I'll try, see if I can get a position teaching again. And there was an opening. I applied. I was hired, and stayed with it for all these years.
Cool.
So it's been great. Along the way, I took a sabbatical and took classwork toward a doctorate. And after an awful lot of years of working on classes and dissertation and such, I got that degree too. So I kind of like to hold myself up as an example for somebody that's their goal, that's their career. You can go from nursing assistant to having a doctorate, yeah, and a wonderful career in this field.
Cool.
But by working here at Yavapai College, I've also felt like I could give something back to this community. And I think that to me, it was important. Because, as I said, it's home. And I think the college has done that in that so many of our students have gone on as graduates and as registered nurses to work in the local hospitals and other healthcare agencies, doctors' offices, the Verde area, and beyond. And there's been, it's an opportunity to influence them as they go forward in their careers too. And there have been many other faculty here. I would love to be able to name all of them, but I probably forget somebody important. But a group of highly dedicated faculty members, and our division secretary, Linda Vanderbloom, who worked longer than I did in this college, and have really done a lot to move the program from where it was as a small program in a small community college to a much larger one with accreditations and growing staff now and growing numbers of students, great number of students. So there's been a really good history for the program to build on.
Cool. So I have another question for you.
Okay.
What's been your favorite role as a faculty?
Okay, my two roles were faculty member and administrator of the program. And while I was doing that, I was also still doing some classroom teaching. Mm-hmm. And I liked that in many ways. I was more removed from the students, so that's the downside. Right. But I felt that I could kind of guide the development of the program, guide the faculty members who were more directly dealing with the students, make sure that we hired people who were well able to carry out the programs as it had been developed, make changes and kind of be the leader for those changes, try to get resources for the program. I liked that part, but I missed the more direct contact with the students. For many years, I was also the advisor for the Student Nurse Association, and I think that group has been important to the college and to the community and to the students to have a sense of being a part of a something bigger than just the program itself. As there were many different projects that were done to help people within the community or on the college campus, and working with state and national. We had a national Student Nurse Association president. That was a big deal. We had a student who won the Spirit of Nursing Award, which was a national award that was given. So we've had a lot of student successes, and I think seeing them and seeing people go out to work successfully in the field has been the most rewarding part of what I have done.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think that's all I have written down to ask. So.
Okay. Well, I thank you for the chance to share some memories with you, and hope this has been helpful.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Okay.